How does blockchain relate to cryptocurrency? And this video series is actually not about cryptocurrency. I'm more interested in the way that blockchain could disrupt power structures. But for a lot of people, the only way they've heard about blockchain is that it's related to cryptocurrency. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how. And this is also a good way of talking about some of the properties of blockchain. Cryptocurrency is not blockchain. Blockchain's the technology behind cryptocurrency that makes it usable in an economy. And hopefully by the end of the video, you'll understand how. Blockchain is a public immutable ledger, and I make a case in another video that a good way of visualizing a blockchain is to imagine a stone tablet in the middle of a prehistoric village, and you can chisel anything you want to into that stone. You can chisel lies, you can chisel truth, you can chisel slander if you want. And because it's public in the middle of town, everyone can see it. Because it's chiseled in stone, it's hard to change. Public immutable ledger. Ledgers are good at keeping track of facts, property rights, and contracts. And for property rights and contracts, I'm going to use cryptocurrency examples, specifically Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, let's move on to Bitcoin, and this is a cryptocurrency that uses blockchain to track property rights. There are basically two ways that you can acquire Bitcoin. One is that you can mine for it, and then the other is that someone could give it to you. I'm not going to fully explain how mining works, but I will say that the term mining is just a fantastic analogy to what's actually going on. When I hear the term mining, I imagine a bunch of people mining for gold by digging in random holes and hacking into random rocks until one of them finally gets really excited because they found an ounce of gold. And then they go over to this stone tablet and they write, I, Lydia Bennett, I actually mined 1 ounce of pure gold today. And everybody validates that because they can see it in her hand and they know that she owns the gold. And there's some good analogy to how Bitcoin mining happens there. Except you're mining for solutions to math problems, trying out different solutions until you find one that actually works. And you are the only person who can ever discover the answer to that particular math problem, so you claim its weight in Bitcoin by writing onto the blockchain, I, Lydia Bennett, mined 1 ounce of Bitcoin in pure math today. Second, you can get Bitcoin if someone gives it to you. And if someone's giving you Bitcoin, it's probably not out of the goodness of their heart. It's probably either because you're buying Bitcoin from them by paying them US dollars, or because they're paying you to do something for them by paying you in Bitcoin. Let's go through an example. So here's what a Bitcoin blockchain might look like. Fanny mined 10 new Bitcoin. Fanny gave 2 Bitcoin to Tom. And maybe that's because Tom paid her in cash. Edmund mined 100 Bitcoin. Edmund gave 15 Bitcoin to Fanny, and maybe that's because Fanny cut Edmund's hair. So this is what the Bitcoin blockchain might look like, except instead of people's names, we use long strings of letters and numbers to keep things anonymous. In which case, you could go through this long, boring list of property right transfers on the blockchain to figure out exactly how much Bitcoin any given person has. That's just a math problem. We see that Fanny has 10 minus 2 plus 15 Bitcoin, and that's 23 Bitcoin. As I mentioned before, each blockchain is allowed to have rules about what gets posted to their blockchain. So let's look at the way that rules help establish validity on the Bitcoin blockchain. Basically, there are a group of people, and let's just say it's 100 people, who all keep a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain on their computer. And whenever someone wants to add a new entry to the ledger, all 100 people vote on whether they should add that new entry to their ledger on their computer, and they make sure that everybody's doing the same thing based on that vote. And those 100 people have agreed on a set of rules that they think should govern their blockchain, and they vote yes or no based on how well they think the new entry meets those guidelines or rules. Let's say Fanny wants to hire Tom to mow her lawn, and she wants to pay him 3 Bitcoin, in which case she would propose a statement be added to the blockchain that says Fanny gives Tom 3 Bitcoin. And if that statement gets voted onto the blockchain, that's the same thing as Fanny giving Tom like 3 cold hard coins of Bitcoin cash, because it officializes Tom's ownership of that money. So how do the 100 people who are voting things onto the blockchain know if Fanny's statement is valid? Well, it's valid as long as Fanny has at least 3 Bitcoin. If she only has 2 Bitcoin, then this statement should not be valid, or else we'd be creating money out of nothing. So each of the 100 people that are voting things onto the blockchain have to read through the entire boring blockchain to find any statement that has anything to do with Fanny, and they have to do the math to figure out how much Bitcoin she actually has before they can determine if this new statement, Fanny gives Tom 3 Bitcoin, is really valid. These voters on the blockchain get really tired of reading through that blockchain, reading every single entry related to Fanny. So somebody invented a software that goes through and reads the blockchain for them and does the math for them and simply tells them whether they should vote yes or whether they should vote no. And of course, all of these voters loved that software because it saved them a lot of time. At this point, you might be wondering what could go wrong with a system like this. Well, let's talk about a 51% attack. Going back to Fanny and Tom, let's say that Tom has an evil mustache. However, since Bitcoin and blockchain are both anonymous, people can't physically see Tom, so they don't know about the evil mustache. So here's what Tom does. He proposes writing onto the blockchain, Fanny gives Tom 1,000 Bitcoin. And maybe he has to hold her to gunpoint to get her to sign her signature, but he can do that. If the system's working well, then the 100 people voting things onto the blockchain are going to vote no on Tom's statement, because their software has told them that Amy doesn't have 1,000 blockchain. She only has 23, so you should vote no. However, if Tom can somehow get 51 of the 100 voting seats, then he can vote yes on his proposal and basically create money out of nowhere. It's almost like if he were the central bank and printing up his own money. And that's horrible. That's the 51% attack that people sometimes talk about, and it's one of the vulnerabilities of blockchain when it comes to cryptocurrency. Okay, let's move into the third type of thing that goes nicely into a ledger, the contract. The funnest blockchain that focuses on contracts is Ethereum. To get our terminology straight, Ethereum is the name of the blockchain and Ether is the name of the cryptocurrency. People have described the Ethereum blockchain as a public global computer. And we can compare that to our definition of a blockchain, which is a stone ledger in the middle of a prehistoric village. And the Ethereum computer is just as immutable as our stone tablet. If we have a computer in the middle of the world, we can go up to it and type anything we want. So what do we want to type? Well, if you look at the back of the Ethereum computer, you're going to find a sticker that says Contracts Encouraged. So you might want to type a contract in there. What would it look like to write a contract onto the Ethereum blockchain? I, Marianne Dashwood, agree to play a piano concert in London in exchange for a month's lodging at Mrs. Jennings' house, signed by both parties. That's easy enough. And you could even write a one-person contract. I, Harry Potter, will leave my firebolt to Ronald Weasley if I die. Hit the save button, and then we've written something onto this public global computer that is the Ethereum blockchain. Also, when we write up these contracts, we notice that a lot of them have the format of just if-then statements. And it turns out computer code is really good at dealing with if-then statements. So we can automate a lot of our contracts by just writing them up into computer code so that they execute automatically when certain conditions are met. And that's a smart contract. Smart contracts are actually so cool that I'm going to do a separate video just on smart contracts. But for now, I'll say that the people who do Ethereum, who put together that global computer, they love it when you write automatically executable smart contracts. And the reason they love it is most of them own Ether, which is the cryptocurrency associated with this blockchain. And Ether people make some money when you write smart contracts onto that global computer. So how does the money work? Well, if you have a smart contract and you want it to execute, you need a little bit of computing power to make that happen. And to buy the computing power you need to make your smart contracts execute, you need to buy gas. Gas. Great name for it. I love it when blockchain people name things intuitively. It's just like the gas you put into your car. It makes things go. Well, it turns out you can't buy gas in US dollars. You can only buy it in the cryptocurrency Ether. So, if you want the computing power to execute your smart contracts automatically, you have to buy Ether. And that's why Ether has value as a cryptocurrency. It's useful. So there you have it. Examples of blockchains. For property rights, you have Bitcoin. For contracts, you have Ethereum. And I should say that Ether as a cryptocurrency gets traded in the same way that Bitcoin does, by recording property rights. So yeah, Ether relates to property rights as well. But the Ethereum blockchain is particularly interesting because of the way it deals with contracts. And smart contracts are so exciting that I'd like to do an entire video just on them. So subscribe if you're still curious.